the use of language. I welcome every one of you. I thank you for your understanding. Having said this, very distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I want to respectfully request the Honorable Minister of Information and Culture, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, to please set the tone by way of opening remarks for this program. Honorable Minister of Information, sir. Thank you.
The Honorable Minister of Works and Housing, Mr. Babajide Raji Fashola, SAN, CON. The Honorable Minister of State, Works and Housing, Honorable Umar Ibrahim El Yakub. Directors, Minister of Information and Culture. Directors, Minister of Works and Housing. DGs of parastatals under the Ministry of Information and Culture. Ladies and gentlemen, gentlemen of the press, I want to say good morning and welcome to this press conference. This is the first edition of our new series entitled PMB Administration Scorecard 2015-2023 series, designed to massively showcase the achievements of the President Muhammadu Buhari administration. We have, over these years, highlighted these achievements via town hall meetings, press conferences, radio and TV documentaries, media appearances, and testimony series. But as the administration winds down, we believe it's very important to consolidate our efforts at showcasing these achievements. Hence, we have designed a number of programs, including the series starting today. In the weeks ahead, we will be unveiling other programs in this regard. Gentlemen, in the words of President Muhammadu Buhari, my coach, this administration has implemented high-impact projects across the length and breadth of the country that meet the yearnings and aspirations of Nigerians. And this is in recognition of the importance of critical infrastructure in economic development and the quest of this administration to leave a lasting legacy, end of quote. Today, you will hear about some of these projects in the area of critical infrastructure from the Honorable Minister of Works and Housing, who is starting this series. Subsequently, we hear from more ministers and other top government officials about the strides in their various ministries and sectors, including transportation, social investment program, economy, communications and digital economy, power, petroleum industry, defense, health, agriculture, youth and sport, trade and investment, fight against corruption, water resources, aviation, and justice, just to mention a few. In the domain of politicking, naysayers have attempted to play down the massive and unprecedented achievements of this government. Some presidential candidates have even released a poorly done photocopy of this administration's achievement as their own blueprint. For the series we are starting today, we will leave them breathless and clueless as we cover all the achievements in the various sectors. Because we have so much to showcase, the frequency of these briefings will be high, and this will run through the remaining part of our tenure. Despite attempts in some circles to downplay the achievements of this administration, I have no scintilla of doubt that history will be fairer and posterity will be kind to us. Those whose trips have been shortened and smoothened by good roads and bridges will remember the government that built those roads and bridges. Those who use the modern terminals at our airports will remember who built them. Those who ride on modern trains along Lagos, Ibadan, Abuja, Kaduna, and Itakpe will not forget those who made that happen. And the 9.8 million school children who are fed daily, the 1 million youths that have been empowered, as well as the 500,000 who are undergoing trainings under the Empower, and the 1,632,480 households that have been enrolled in the conditional cash transfer program will not forget that government. On this note, honorable ministers, distinguished ladies and gentlemen of the press, it is my pleasure to invite the Honorable Minister of Works and Housing to make a presentation, after which we take your questions. Honorable Minister, please. Thank you very much. As I was delivering my address, the Minister of State, Science and Technology, Honorable Iketuku Ilolu Ikoku just came in. You're welcome, sir.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, honorable ministers. It is my pleasure to be here, and there's quite a lot to report, and the time allotted is quite generous, I must say, but I would try to perhaps be more efficient with it so that perhaps we can have a better interaction. A monologue that this presentation probably represents will not ideally respond to some of your concerns, seeing that essentially the whole of the diversity of Nigeria is represented here. But let me start by quickly perhaps making a preemptive announcement, and that is with regards to the very sad and devastating floods that are impacting many parts of our country today. It's really a very grave matter, very tragic in its human and economic cost. It's going to require an all-of-government approach from local to state and to federal governments to deal with it. It's going to require an all-of-nation approach also, perhaps something similar to the way we responded to COVID, where everybody plays a role, because really everybody is impacted one way or the other. All I can tell you now is that in the last 2 weeks, all our controllers in the 36 states have been mandated to go out, measure, assess, document, evaluate costs of replacement, rehabilitation where necessary, and restoration. So, as you know, we've been in a retreat for the last 2 days, so we finished late. And I won't get to the office until after this. But we are having an interdepartmental meeting, I believe, tomorrow at 2 o'clock to receive that report. We are already in touch with our colleagues in the National Assembly also, who are also concerned. So it is when we do all of this work and we can quantify the cost in terms of resources that we can work with the National Assembly to begin to dimension how we will respond in terms of a solution. We are mindful of the imminence of the end of year and the heavy human and goods logistics that go with festivity. We want to be in a position to make that as less painful as possible. At the moment, there are also places where we can't do a lot because this is nature, so we wait for the floods to recede a little bit. So, but just to, as I said, preempt you that we are not idle, we are already planning a response, but it's going to be coordinated, it's going to be planned. So let me go to the report now. So I just want to quickly show you some of the more recent issues because they're not covered in this report in detail. So again, I'm trying to preempt questions. So that is a photograph of the second Niger Bridge taken about 2 weeks ago at night. So the bridge itself is finished. For those who are concerned about that, finished. What remains is the link road. There's a 4-kilometer link road on the Asaba side. Right now, our dredger is in place. We have to build the road by reclaiming sand. So flood has slowed us down there at the moment. So we're waiting for the water to recede. On the Onitsha side, there's a 7-kilometer road that links this bridge and the Onitsha-Owerri interchange. The last time I visited, we had covered about 5 kilometers out of the 7 asphalted. So we're still racing against time. We've lost some time now due to nature, but we keep going. But in terms of the bridge, the crossing completed. And those who've been there know that you can walk the length of the bridge on both sides now unimpeded. But it's just to make the connection. So if you go to the next, these are sections of the Abuja, Kaduna, Kanu highway. This is a 375 kilometer highway. It is the largest project this government is currently undertaking in cost. It is about 700 plus billion naira. And in terms of scope of works, it is 375 kilometers, let me repeat that, of dual carriageway covering 41 bridges of different sizes. Now, the Kanu to Zaria end is about 134 or so kilometers. Many sections of that have been completed. Kaduna to Zaria, about 70-something kilometers. Many sections of that have been completed also. The Kaduna to Abuja is the longest part, the busiest part, and the most difficult part. It is 165 kilometers. It is heavily built up. There are so many trailer parks here and there, markets, communities, things that have to be relocated. We hear you when you complain and observe the difficulties you are going through there. We haven't stopped work, but it's just a difficult environment to build, to relocate people, to move communities who have settled by the roadside. But this we do on a painstaking and enjoying basis, working with the Minister of FCT, whose territory is impacted, the Governor of Niger, whose territory is impacted, and the governors of Kaduna, whose territory is impacted, to help us move those people away. You know also that the government is building the Ajaokuta Kaduna Kanu gas pipeline. It cuts across parts of this road. So again, that is slowing us down in some places because we want to wait for the pipeline to be laid. so that we can build the road instead of having the road cut again to lay the pipeline after we have finished. Just to give you some heads up about what's going on there. So if you go on, this is the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. Again, a lot of progress also has been made here. We're just around the toll gate in Ibadan, on the Ibadan side. Again, we are suffering delays right now. The Oyo state government is building a drainage channel across the road. So we're having difficulties. The contractor has slowed down. We have slowed down also because we don't want to finish the road, then they cut it again to build drainage. On the Lagos end, we are working on the last 6 kilometers into Lagos. That is a very, very highly densely populated area. We left it for the last because we knew it would be the most difficult. So again, bear with us. We are hoping that very soon there will be relief there. But otherwise, we have covered essentially the distance from after the long bridge all the way into Ibadan now. That distance takes you barely an hour to travel. So it's just the last finishing touches to close out these projects, and that's where we are. Now, this is the Bodo Bonny project. Bonny Island is where our NNNG is situated. It's one of the places where very vast resources are produced into the economy of Nigeria in terms of natural gas. But for centuries, this place, without what you see now, there has never been a road into Bonny from Bodo. This is in Rivers State. There has never been a road for centuries. This is the island, Opobo area, where the famous King Jaja of Opobo used to dominate centuries ago. This government is building a road and bridges of 39 kilometers combined into that island. Now you will see the bridge slowly being launched. This will be finished sometime when we have left late in 2023. Just to provide optics, before now, whether it was water, it was soap, anything you wanted in the island of Bonny had to be ferried by canoes and flying boats. No vehicle could cross. That will end by next year. So these are some very heavy projects that I just thought I should preempt our conversation with. So if we go quickly now to the body of the presentation, and just to highlight what we have there, and just to say that I want us to understand, and this has been quite an issue, because when we're talking about infrastructure, whether it is roads, whether it is bridges, whether it is fiber for communication, whether it is classrooms for schools, clinics for healthcare, airports, and all of that, we are really talking about the economy. Because it is the total stock of infrastructure that determines how efficient that economy is. So if there are no roads to connect states, I mean, you can imagine, let's go to that Bodo Bonny. Just leave the slide here, it's fine. But let's just imagine a place where you cannot cross by road. So when I visited the place, they told me that when there is bad weather through the creeks into the Atlantic, for 3 days, nobody can move. Sometimes. Because the only way to connect is either by boats or by chopper. So just imagine 3 days of no activity. That cannot be a prosperous environment. So, and this is the same thing. So we're talking about Lagos, Ibadan. People used to sleep on that road. And so look at the downtime that it costs. Now it's an hour plus, 2 hours, at least you can go to Ibadan and be sure that you will come back the same day. So when we're talking about infrastructure, which President Buhari has made his focal point, it is really the economy that he's addressing. So it's more than just, oh, there's a road. And I will go into this. But let me now lay the background. So some of the things we are now showing we're talking about our scorecard. How did we get here? And that is what this slide is about. So in 2015, when I did my ministerial briefing on the 8th of December, this was part of what I reported after I was briefed. And quote, the records that have been made available from previous budgets showed that the last time that Nigeria budgeted over 200 billion naira in a year for roads was in 2002. So I was giving this speech in 2015. So the last time we spent anything close to 200 billion naira was 13 years before I was minister. So, and the status report for that year was that all that was in the 2015 budget that we inherited was 18 billion naira. 18. So what can you do with that? So, and, you know, part of what I also said, out of that 18 billion, only 13 billion was released for all the roads in Nigeria. 2015, when this government came. And we had contracts then for over 206 roads. And there was outstanding payments of about 2.3 trillion that had not been paid. So that was the economy we met. But what was this doing to the economy? Don't forget I said this is about the economy. So let's link it. What was this doing to the economy? Construction workers were laying off staff when we came. And what does layoff mean? Productivity declining. Is that not it? So, one company, I spoke to four companies. The first company told me that they had laid off 1,800 junior staff. Construction company. The second company had laid off 3,000 junior staff. The third one had 2,500 people to go. The fourth one had asked 4,500 people to go. Now, when you are laying off staff, what is happening to the economy? Where is it going, up or down? So, the seed of recession had already been sown before we came. By the way this sector was handled. So, and at the top of that presentation, that newspaper, Thursday, 14th June 2012, 3 years before we came, Okonjo-Iweala warns Nigerians to prepare for economic recession. This is not personal. She was doing her job. Recession was coming. So it did not matter who won the election in 2015. We are going to go into a recession. So when I hear people say, oh, there was a recession under Buhari, yes, it was foretold. The seeds for it were laid before Buhari became president. He inherited it. The question to ask, what did Buhari do to get out of recession? Because we got out. So I will go from there very quickly to talk about, I think that's the fifth slide. So by the time we came, oil prices had dropped to about $38. All of us remember that. That is the biggest income source of Nigeria. Because it is important to set this context so that for those who intend to revise history, because it's not just easy to just come now and say, oh, this is where we are. We got here in a context. So if you go to slide 7, I believe it is, our government then did a few things. We expanded the budget. And I think the first budget that we got from 18 billion or so was about 250 something billion. So and I will show you the incremental part of that. But beyond that, the president now issued an executive order 7 to say that if private sector was able to, they should bring their taxes ahead and we will use it to build infrastructure that the public can use and the builder can use. And that's a tax credit scheme that has become very popular. Just last week, MTN, for example, decided that they were going to take over the Enugu-Onitsha highway. GZ Industries in Abia also said they were going to build industries in their area. Dangote has used it to build their Papa Urushoki Expressway. And there are so many other interests that we are dealing with. But apart from that, this administration also went to take funding through the Sukuk. And we also took some loans. And for those who say, oh yes, there's concern about the loans, that's a legitimate concern to have. The question is, should we not do this? And is there any state that say, for example, okay, we don't want loan, so stop all the projects in our state? Is there somebody from any state who will raise his hand to say we should do that? So that's how government has functioned, and collaborations with other agencies. So if you go to slide 8, what you will see is that our budget from 18 billion in 2015 went to 260 billion, but there was no money. Revenues are tanked. So that's the innovation, the creativity that this government brought into financing public spending. And just for the record, that meant that there was a percentage increase of over 1,334% in public spending. Those were some of the first steps we took on our way out of recession. So you can see then from 2017, we concluded the process of issuing Sukuk. That's in slide 9. And you will see that the Sukuk, everywhere you go now, you will see those signs, the Sukuks across the country, and you will see what is being done with the resources at our disposal. That is also, for me, some form of transparency and accountability. But don't forget, even the Sukuk was not without its difficulties. When it was first put in the public space, some people said, oh, Buhari wants to Islamize Nigeria with Sukuk. But when we ask people, is there any zone that does not want Sukuk? Nobody raised their hand. So there was nothing Islamic about the Sukuk except of the way that it was conceived as a special alternative to contemporary financing. But at the end of the day, it is not faith-based in whether it builds a Christian or a Muslim road. It just builds a road that all of us use. And you will see the impact there. In 2017, we did 482 kilometers with 100 billion. In 2018, we did 642 kilometers. In 2020, we did 757 kilometers. And these are roads that people are now using in one form or the other. So if we quickly go to slide 10, the president also created another fund, the Presidential Infrastructure Development Fund. Where did these monies come from, you might wonder? Dividend from our shares in the NLNG in Bonny. We're shareholders there. I don't know what used to happen to the dividend before now. But this time the president said, put it in a fund, put it in NSIA. Let them use it to pay for Lagos Ibadan, use it to pay for Second Niger Bridge, use it to pay for Abuja, Kano. Then some monies had been stolen out of Nigeria under another government years ago. This president went around saying, give us our money back. But the people too saw the money as free money. They wanted to keep it. So they put conditions. They say, well, you know, if we give you, who is to say that something will happen to it again? Okay, you know, the way we are going to give you is let us have an agreement that you put them to dedicated prayer. And President Buhari said, fine, I'm ready to sign that, just bring the money. So he nominated Lagos Ibadan Abuja Kanu second Niger bridge, because the NLNG dividend is once in a year, so it wasn't enough to finish this. So that's how this PIDF was built, and I've shown you some of the results, so I won't dwell too much on it. You will also see in slide 11 the road infrastructure tax credit scheme. I've told you what some of the private sector players are doing there. I've mentioned MTN, GZ Industries, I've mentioned Dangote. One of the players here is the NNPC through some of its subsidiaries. One of the subsidiaries is PTDF, Petroleum Trust Development Fund. You will remember what happened to the Petroleum Trust Development Fund in the administration before ours. It was a scandal. They took the money and used it for all sorts of unsalutary undertakings. It is very well documented. So if you go on Google search, Google PTDF, the first thing you will see when you Google PTDF is scandal. But what you will see now under the Buhari administration is roads. We are constructing over 1,000 kilometers, 600 and something billion provided through as tax revenues to government to build roads under the same PTDF where the money used to be applied for all sorts of slippery things. So again, so when people talk about anti-corruption, Buhari is not. What better evidence of a transparent disposition can you have? Sukuk roads, Sukuk identity, each one tagged, monies that have been taken out, brought back in, used for developmental purposes, monies that used to be used to buy cars for friends, now being used to build roads. Is that not consistent with the disposition and the commitment to say that we will be more transparent and find a way to push back on corruption? So I will go quickly, I think, to slide 15. Just to highlight for you, again, roads under multilateral loans, particularly China Exim bank loans. And a lot of debate has gone on about, oh, China is going to come and seize this, China is going to take back our country. But I think we all should take time to find out how many loans are there even in Nigeria. How many? In the Ministry of Works and Housing, we have only two. And even the first one has not crystallized, so we haven't even drawn it down. We haven't completed the process. The one that is running is the one being used to build the Abuja, Akwanga, Kefi, Lafia, Makurdi highway. Those who come from that part of town know that the road is making progress and we should complete it by April next year. So that's what the loan again was used for. Transparently, you can see the result. You can see what's going on there. The second part of the loan is being used is to build Makurdi to Enugu Night Mile and complete the connection between the east of Nigeria and the Federal Capital Territory by road. So much for China Exim loan. The other loan that was taken before our administration. It was an African Development Bank finance, and it was taken by the government of Nigeria and the government of Cameroon jointly after the Bakassi dispute, in order to further collaboration between the two nations to build a new bridge. I'm able to report that this administration has completed that project. That bridge has been finished, and I think on the 2nd or 3rd of November, it will be formally opened for public use this year. So again, we have collaboration. I think I'm on slide 16. If you quickly go there, we have collaboration with the Northeast Development Commission. This was a commission created, I believe, at the onset of this administration to manage the unique problems of the Northeast. And those that are from those areas will remember the Maraba, Mubi, Michika, Madagali Road in Adamawa. The bridges there, you used to see, if you remember those photographs, I think it was in 2015, of bridges that had been damaged. They used to be shown on national network almost every evening. That is the consequence of war. And I tell people that the lesson from that is that nobody really must promote any violent environment. We must all subscribe to peace. You know the interesting thing about that bridge? It wasn't the insurgents who damaged the bridge. I met the contingent of the Nigerian army. They blew the bridge to cut off the insurgents in order to protect the people. So when war happens, nobody remembers about buildings. Everybody just focuses on winning. And therefore, things may have to be destroyed in order to win. And oftentimes, women and children then become displaced. They are the most vulnerable. So all of us must continue to invest in peace, because the consequences of war are really devastating. We are removed from the theater of war, but it is not a good experience. Those who have experienced it never want to see it again. And we must do everything in our power to ensure that it does not happen. But the good news is that those bridges have been rebuilt. And those from that part of the country, from Adamawa, will confirm that in our collaboration with the Northeast Development Commission. So if you hear that money is also being made available to the Northeast Development Commission, these are some of the results that I am able to share with you. So I'm just going to go quickly just to show some results, and we just flip through from pages 17 right to 21. These are just photographs of inspection, and just so that you might know, my directors here, my team members, ministers, we've drive this country twice, all the 36 days. We drive 12 hours every day from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. We've gone with journalists too. Some of you have gone with me. So we've done this twice. What we're now doing are spot checks, zonal meetings, zonal reviews. Honorable Minister is on his way. I think you are going tomorrow. So he will be doing the Northwest. I just finished parts of the Southwest. So our directors, zonal directors, we're just going out. But it just shows you what we have done in a nutshell. So go to slide 21, if you please. Now, I was talking about the economy, because this is important. What we're used to, or what we focus on, is the road is finished. But in the process to that road, there's a deep economic interaction that sometimes we don't see. So you will see here some of the things that we have had to deal with. So we have these projects that I am talking about, the infrastructure investment. This is just one link to the economy. And this link means that 512,505,000 tons of reinforcement, that's iron rod, has been bought and sold in the Nigerian economy. Now, let's pause. The construction companies don't keep iron rod, they don't keep building materials. So it is Lai Steel, if Alhaji Lai Mohammed has a steel industry, that will supply it. If you want diesel, it is El Yakub oil or petroleum and Ikomi cement that will supply all of this. So this is how the economy works. So that process has meant that so many parts of our economy have been impacted by that government spending. All of these funds, I've told you, has actually reached the base of the economy. and I will attempt just to explain to you the suppliers, the small industries, the small businesses. So we've had 40 million tons of coast aggregates. Those who run quarries will tell you what has been happening. It's the best kept secret. Nobody tells you. Everybody complains, oh, Buhari has not done anything for me. But business is going on in the quarries. Those who own quarries will tell you that. And aggregates for construction, fine aggregates, we've used 18 million tons. We've used 3 million tons of bitumen. We've used 51 million liters of petrol and over 1 billion liters of diesel. Now, all of these are supplied largely by Nigerians, by families, by small businesses, and so on and so forth. That's one economic impact. So let's go to this slide. Unfortunately, the graphics are not very, very pleasant to the eyes, but this is how we can fit it in. And I'm just going to quickly share with you 12 roads that we have finished, opened, commissioned. Some of them you will be familiar with. Lafia will be Awetunga Road in Nasarawa, Vandekia Obudu, Cattle Ranch Road between Cross River and Benue, Adejia Unguru Phase 2, Unguru Gashua Bayamari Section 1, Gombe Numa Yola Road Phase 2, Kano Maiduguri Road Section 2 between Shuarin and Azare in Bauchi, Kano Maiduguri Road Section 3 between Azare and Potiskum in Bauchi, Section 1 of Sokoto Tambuwa Jega Kotangora Makera Road, that was 304 kilometers. Newe Uduma Road between Enugu and Ebonyi. Isoko Ring Road in Delta State. F1 Layerimo Iwaraja Road between Ekiti and Osun State. All of these roads total 896 kilometers. Ministers of the Republic have been representing the president in their various states to hand over formally open this road. But that's not the story. The story is that at every commissioning, we actually send people out to find out how these roads have impacted their lives in their journey time. And the results encourage us that really President Buhari's commitment about infrastructure as an economic tool is working. The average journey time reduction has been 56.2%. So just imagine that what you used to do in 2 hours, you can now do in 1 hour. You saved 1 hour. You know how that turns into productivity? How that translates into well-being? Maybe 1 extra hour of sleep before you get out in the morning. And so when the president says that he believes that Nigeria can lift 100 million people out of poverty in 10 years, people expect, oh, Buhari is going to give everybody a job and a handshake. No, Buhari is already reaching you. All of those supplying the quarry, the aggregate, the cement, the iron rod, those are opportunities for prosperity. And the opposite of poverty, is it not prosperity? If time is money, a policy of government that begins to save 56% of travel time is time available for other productive engagement. And so that is the way I understand it. But apart from travel time, it is also cost savings. So we've done the reduction in cost of travel. We already did that survey, and they exactly almost approximate another 56% in cost of travel expense. Of course, there are inflationary tendencies now that have eaten into some of those gains. But this is the way in which to understand what the linkage between infrastructure, the economy and my quality of life is. And I hope that we will explain it to ourselves this way. But one more interesting thing before I leave this area. Everywhere that we have built a road, housing projects, or whatever, the value of land there has gone up by between 30 to 40%. That's not us. These are estate valuers reporting back to us that adjoining land has gone up by 30, 40. Who owns the land? Is it not the people? Who keeps the increased value? Is it Buhari? Has Buhari not reached that person if he has added to the value he can get for his land? And this is how governments work. And perhaps this is time for us to begin to assess and measure things properly in their impact. Now, I'm going to go quickly also to slide 24. And this slide just shows you the number of people. You know, I started by telling you about the number of people that had been laid off before we came. Now you can see the number of people that are now getting employed. We submit these numbers frequently, quarterly, and it was part of our report at the just concluded retreat. Now go to slide 26. Let me just dial in onto this. No, so this is slide 26. This is one contractor, one of our contractors in the year 2020. One. And we have hundreds of them. So in this year of 2020, this contractor gave subcontracts to suppliers. 1,421 suppliers benefited from one contractor in this economy. One. And they disbursed 45 billion for items ranging from bitumen to laterite to sand to cement to reinforcement and diesel. But the economic story is not finished. It doesn't end at just give contracts for supply. So let's look at the bitumen. In that year, they bought 24,000 tons of bitumen. You know what that translates to? 580 truck trips. 775,000 cubic meters of laterite translated to 50,000 truck trips. And I'm not going to take too much time. Let me close with the last one. 49 million liters, of diesel was 1,200 truck trips. Are the trucks moving by themselves? What's happening to them? Can you connect the employment? Can you connect the dots? This is what's happening in this economy. Because we keep these records. So, but slide 27 shows a very, very important but unseen part of job creation, and that is Engineer Ezedozi's department. Materials, geotechnics, and quality control. On every road, not only is the laterite, you can't use any laterite. There's a standard. You can't use just any water. You can't go and pour salt water to mix cement. He won't agree. And his staff won't agree. So, we have 130 laboratories employing people doing different works, testing the quality of what goes into every road in this country. The contractors also have their own laboratories. And so all of the people who are skilled in these areas, geologists and all of them, and other disciplines are employed here without construction contracts, without PIDF fund, without sukuk, without an expanded budgetary commitment, without tax credit. These laboratories won't work and jobs would have been lost. But our number of laboratories are increasing. So far with what we have done, Now let me just now go quickly to slide 28. And I just call this what the people say. Because when we go on this commissionings, we ask people, what's happening? And I've given you some of the reports. So let me now give you just a few. This was when we opened Sokoto Tambuwa Jega Kontagora Road on the 25th of November 2021. Garba, a commuter and Koko resident, this is what he had to say. Quote, before the rehabilitation of the road, it took an average of 3 hours to drive from Jega to Koko. But that time has now been reduced to 30 minutes. That's what the person who uses the road said. Now, Ibrahim Musa is the secretary of the Cocoa Trailer Drivers Union. I am secretary of Cocoa Trailers Union. I am a driver myself. We thank the government greatly for the rehabilitation work. We promise to give it our 100% support. Before the rehabilitation of this road, it took us 5 hours to drive from Jega to Koko, and between 6 and 7 hours to Yauri. It is now 1 hour 30 minutes. Ibrahim Musa. The Emir of Yauri, His Highness Dr. Muhammad Zayanu Abdullahi, said, and I quote him, I am grateful to the federal government for initiating and completing the rehabilitation works on this road, which was constructed in the 1970s and has never received any rehabilitation attention until the tenure of Muhammadu Buhari. End of quote. And the story is not different. So on the 29th of November 2021, when we commissioned the Vandekia Obudu Road, this is what Benjamin Uye from Vandekia, a driver, because we actually talked to the people who use the road. This is what he said. The road before this time was very bad, and our vehicles often broke down, got stuck, and driving along it was a challenge. For almost 10 years, our people suffered on this road. Accidents, breakdowns, and other problems associated with the road. But today we are happy. The road has been constructed and it is very motorable. And there are others, but I will just flip and share because of time. So this is a very interesting one. It is from His Royal Majesty Eze Daniel Njoku, D1J1 of Ezine, on the day we commissioned the Newe Oduma Road between Enugu and Ebonyi. He said, and I quote him, I thank Mr. President for the completion of this road, Newe Oduma. Every indigene of Oduma could recall that in the past, if you wanted to return to Oduma, you will either come by a helicopter, or if you are coming in your car, you have to park at the neighboring Newe town and complete the journey on Okada. So you downgrade as you go home. But he says further, during the dry season, while traveling from Oduma, one had to first go to Newe on Okada with a spare cloth with which to change on arrival at Newe before continuing the journey, because you would have been overtaken by dust from laterite on your Okada. But he says, but today, these roads had brought Oduma to limelight. End of quote. So on the Azare to Potiskum Road, Malam Salisu Ibrahim Azare, a commuter, this is what he had to say. We suffered on this road before. We can't even say anything about the difficulties we encountered on this road. It was one lane and in bad shape. We never thought it would be this good. Now it's very fine. I am very happy. Every day I apply this road and I come here every morning. Everything about this road, the roundabouts and the crossings are good. People are very happy about the work. I heard them at different places praising it. It's one of the roads people are happy with. Many roads passing through Azare and inside Azare town have been reconstructed now with interchanges, crossings, and roundabouts. End of quote. So those are just some of the snippets. And I will go quickly to slide 33 just to share with you that we are also investing in tertiary institutions owned by the federal government. I had cause to visit and speak at one of the tertiary institutions, and I saw how bad their state of internal roads were. And I recall that having schooled in Nigeria, I had a better experience, and I persuaded my team and they agreed. We persuaded the National Assembly and they agreed that we should do some strategic intervention in terms of roads across federal tertiary institutions. We're not doing anything big, basically no more than 2.2 kilometers of internal road network. But the impact has been very, very instructive. So we are currently in 83 tertiary institutions across Nigeria. Federal colleges of education, federal polytechnics, federal universities, and all of that. We're in 83. And we have completed 66 projects in 66 of those universities. We have commissioned 46, and every year the number keeps increasing. But there are a few things to take away from here. Is that when you hear the conversation, oh, federal government is not spending enough in education, slow down and absorb it. The investment in education does not start and end with mainly what is core education. Investment in infrastructure that makes education more pleasant and more progressive is also an investment in education. And the results here will just show you how impactful this has been. So the executive director of one of the institutions, which is our National Institute for Nigerian Languages in Abia State, Professor Obiajulu Elumejulu, while the commissioning of the 2.1 kilometer road was being undertaken on the 18th of February 2021, declared, and I quote, "This intervention is unprecedented. It has raised the profile of our institute and confirmed to the naysayers that we are also a federal government-owned tertiary institution." End of quote. That's what it means to them there, that they are now federal. They have been recognized. At the University of Maiduguri Teaching Hospital, where a 2.5 kilometer internal road was also rehabilitated, the president of the Students' Union government, Comrade Hakuri Tamus, in his speech said, and I quote him, "This intervention is a big blessing to the academic community because the sandy nature of roads before the intervention made it slippery, and the school recorded a lot of accidents as students usually fell from motorbikes." End of quote. The Vice Chancellor of Federal University Dutse Jigawa, Professor Fatima Batul Mukhtar, in her remarks at the handing over of an 800-meter road on February 2, 2021, said, and I quote, "Before the rehabilitation of this road, students and parents had to park their vehicles outside the gate to walk down to the school in a pool of water." End of quote. That is no longer the story. And I could go on. There is more, but I think I will save time and go to slide 35. And these are just snippets of pictorials. We have a full report on all of this. Should you desire it, we can make it available, those who want to see, because we document everything that we do. But let me begin to wind down by going on quickly to slide, what number is that? The section on housing, it's 37. And just to say that again, we are intervening in housing. We can't do everything in housing. Land, a major component, is a state responsibility, but collaboratively we are impacting through the ministry. The National Housing Project is active, providing accommodation for some residents in 35 states of the Republic now. But more importantly, as I told you about infrastructure, it is providing jobs for people. It is employing people who had no work before. And it is really their story that I believe represents the story of our national housing intervention, the story of people, of Nigerians. So on slide 38, I will tell you the story of Ado. Ado is the guy in the top left photograph there. I met him at the National Housing Scheme in Kaduna, Ado Danlami. So he told me that this housing project is in Rigashiku, those who know the area in Kaduna. So when we went on inspection, he came to me and said, look, Oga, please thank President Buhari for me. I said, do you know him? He said, no, I don't know him like that, but without this housing project, I wouldn't have gotten a job. That there was one girl he had been planning to marry, but he couldn't pay dowry. But because of his earnings from this job, it's an important story. He can pay dowry, he has married her, and a baby is on the way. Now, you see, Buhari doesn't need to shake hands with that man, but he reached him. And there are more. In the photograph beneath, Sani Isa, we met in Kano at the program in Gamagwari in Fage, Kano. So I interacted with him, and Sani Isa owns a cement mixer. You know that machine, the cement mixer. That's his investment. But he needs it to make money. Now, when our contractor got this job, our contractor doesn't keep cement mixer. So Isa Sani is a subcontractor. Every day that cement mixer is turning on site, Isa Sani goes home with 10,000 naira. That's the story. These are the human stories. So when I tell people that infrastructure is the most legitimate way to distribute wealth in a society, these are the faces of that wealth distribution. And there are many more of them. Now, this is another interesting story on page 39. This was in Oyo State. You can see the building on the right is now completed. The estate has been finished. But when we went on inspection on the 4th of March 2017, I met Mr. Emmanuel. And on the left there, you will see Mr. Emmanuel's mixer. And these prices change. So Mr. Emmanuel's mixer was being rented on this site for 20,000 a day. Mr. Emmanuel is from Lagos, incidentally. From our interaction, he told me he came to Oyo from Lagos. He got wind that there was work there. So he gets 20K every day that mixer is working. So that's 100,000 naira for 5 days, or 120 if you work until Saturday. But there is a more interesting story. I was sitting next to Mrs. Emmanuel. Mrs. Emmanuel has followed Daddy to the site. What does Mrs. Emmanuel do? She has taken over the supply of food there. So husband and wife on construction site. When I interviewed Mrs. Emmanuel, how much do you make from here? I said, well, a plate of food costs about 250 to 300 naira. And usually they eat twice. So I said, how much do you make? Say, well, at the end of the day, after all my costs, I go home with extra 5,000 naira per day. So times 6, times 4, you do the math. And with Mr. Emmanuel's daily 20,000. So people are finding their own way on this journey of our infrastructure. So it's more than just a building. It's our people. It's families. It's human stories. And these are just snippets of what we documented. So in Akwa Ibom, and that's the next slide, on the 22nd of March, I told you we go around. So at least you can see me in some of the pictures. So I met engineer Obosi. Obosi is a graduate of Federal University of Technology, Owerri, Futo. I think you know that school. So Obosi is not waiting for Buhari to come and hand him a job. He has found his way to this site. He's a graduate of metallurgy. And so, let me quote him. He said, I am the one handling the mechanical aspects of work here. We want to see more. We are most grateful. And he speaks in our language, and I quote him, I chop inside this project. What I chop inside is the mechanical implementation of the project. End of quote. At the site, same site, no, sorry, that's not the same site. In Delta, I met Obi Nauyeka, and again, I interacted with him. He was the foreman, the one in charge of all the workers on the site, earning their own living on that site. The Delta housing project has also been completed. In Mina, on the 28th of January 2022, I met Adamu Danjuma, and he was earning a weekly livelihood of 15,000 just as laborer. And the story continues on slide 42. This gentleman, unfortunately, I don't have a record of his name. This was the housing site in Ebonyi. He was trying to teach me how to paint with his roller. And you will see on the right side at the bottom, people, so from Mrs. Emmanuel cooking, the cement mixer, the metallurgy, that's the process to build the house. And what you are seeing on the bottom right is the houses now being handed over. That was Imo State on the day we did it. Some of the Super Eagles who were promised houses since 1994, 20-something years ago, who never got it, President Buhari approved, and all of them have been allocated their houses after 20-something years. So, again, all this infrastructure at the end of the day is really about us. They are human stories beyond brick and mortar. Now if you go to 44, very quickly, and I'm closing up, very quickly you will see, we're just reporting, all of that national is just ministry. So Federal Mortgage Bank is impacting in housing. Federal Housing Authority is also impacting. Federal Mortgage Bank has introduced something we call now, it has done two things. So let me put them in context. And those two things are about affordability. So even when there is mortgage, usually there is a contribution that you have to make to be qualified for a mortgage. It's called your equity contribution. For homeowners who do not seek to borrow more than 5 million naira, their equity contribution used to be 5%. 5% of 5 million, I think it's 250,000 naira. But that's a lot of money even for some people. And they became ineligible by reason of the inability to raise 250,000. Working with our ministry, who supervises the Federal Mortgage Bank, the board sensibly proposed, and we approved, that the demand for equity contribution for loans up to 5 million should be taken out completely, and so is zero. You can get your loan up to 5 million without making an equity contribution. For those from 5 million above, it was a different proposition. Their equity contribution used to be 15%, but we couldn't make it totally zero. Again, we reduced that to 10% to make it easier for them, because they fall into a different income bracket. But more importantly, we have now introduced what we also call rent to own. So that the rent you are paying now, wherever your landlord is, God forbid, if you fall out with your landlord, you know you go away empty-handed and go to another house. But under the rent-to-own scheme, you are a paying tenant but a waiting landlord. Your rent becomes your accruing contribution to owning the house. As at August 22, I think the figure is that 717 people have already benefited. They are processing many more applications, but 717 people have benefited, and over 4-point-something billion has been disbursed to make people able to participate. Slide 45 shows you some of the houses being built by and so on, houses being built by Federal Housing Authority. I believe that this year we should open one of the FHA estates in Zuba, which is a 767 housing unit, blocks of flats at the closing stages. Yes, that's it on the top left slide. So let's just quickly go to 47 and talk through it. Again, we have just provided all the construction sites where people are working, 46 sites in 35 states and the FCT, a total of 6,022 housing units under construction, over 2,800 completed, work still going on. Direct jobs, 29,030 people. Indirect jobs, 57,874 people. Building contractors who won the contracts, 1,245 building contractors won the contracts. Now, those are the small businesses and sons, enterprises, limited, and their families and the people who depend on them for a living, the people they employ. So 1,245 contractors supporting vast numbers of members of our national community. But the story of housing doesn't end here. It goes on to 48, and what we have to report here is the issuance of certificates of occupancy. Now, I don't know how long. I've seen some certificates of occupancy application dating back to 1992. We have signed a lot. As at the last record, we have signed 6,337 COOs. 6,337. Backlogs. But you know, the interesting thing, the lands department will now tell you what's going on in the economy. Because not everybody wants to buy government house. People also want to buy from one another. People also want to use their land to raise mortgage loan, but they have no title. So again, this is unlocking access to housing, these C of Os. And we are already seeing subsequent transactions. All of the C of Os I signed, I think, 2 years ago. Just this morning, I still saw one before I came. I saw one this morning, and there's a subsequent transaction. He too has sold to somebody. Government has made money, and business is going on. We see a lot of deeds of mortgages from banks using C of Os we signed 1-2 years ago to secure loans. It's coming back into the economy. So that's going on. We issue consent. So that's the story of consent. After 6,337 C of Os have been issued, we've seen 2,731 consents. That means transactions are going on relating to land in the economy. But so these are some of the stories. I think the way I like to close this presentation today is to talk a little more about land. Right now, the Federal Land Registry the Federal Land Registry has about 48,000 files. 48,000 files in the Federal Land Registry. And it's all paper. So we've decided to digitize that registry. And so going forward, all our land transactions, when we finish digitization, is going to be a digital relationship. In order to do that, we have to scan every file. Right now, we have scanned, I believe, 43 point something thousand files, totaling over 2.2 million pages. So we should finish this year, and we will go live by the end of the year. So all our transactions in that respect will become digital. So we're almost done. But what will happen, you might want to ask. We looked at some of our processes. There were processes that required up to 50 steps in order to process a land document. Some of these processes are being reduced to 14, 10, and the time it takes, some of these things used to take 90 days. Many of them will take not more than 72 hours. That is the change that is coming in that regard. Let me go to slide 54, and I think that would be a good place, I think, to end it. 54 and 56. So we met some federal secretarial projects when I took office. They were in different stages of completion. Many of the contractors, the same story, had left site. If you had 18 billion for roads, how much were you going to have for housing? But the story has changed. As we are building houses for the public, we are also building offices for public servants who have to do this work. So many of our public servants who are in rented accommodation in some of the states will move, I think in the new year at the latest, to properly purpose-built offices in Yenagoa, in Zamfara, in Bayelsa, in Yenagoa, Bayelsa, Zamfara, Guzo, Lafia in Nasarawa, and in Oka in Anambra. All the buildings are done. Furniture procured. So we are just installing furniture and fitting some snags here and there. And once we finish, the last one that we are waiting to finish and sign off is Zamfara, so that we can then schedule dates for Mr. President to officially commission, open, and hand them over. But they also have stories of jobs. We met 24 federal secretariats in very different states of disrepair and discomfort for productivity. I think those who work in our federal secretariats now have a different story to tell. We have started facility management, facility maintenance in all the federal secretariats, and this is also creating jobs. So President Buhari says that maintenance is not a culture, it's an economy. That's why he signed Executive Order 11. And we are seeing the results, because each secretariat after rehabilitation now has a facility manager who maintains, cleans, makes sure toilets work, air conditioning, everything work. So each person that got a facility management contract also now employs people. Each one of them employs at least 40 people to maintain and keep the facility running. Those jobs were not there before this administration. These are again some of these human stories, and this is data to show it. And but you know the interesting thing also, as you engage facility managers, maintenance goes on. You know where the money is going? The money is going to the markets, it's going to the supermarkets, because it means that you have to keep a regular inventory of cleaning materials, bleach, reagents, soap, detergent, sanitizers, rakes, broom, and so many things. You also need to maintain technicians who do heating, cooling, air conditioning, gardening, and so on and so forth. So these are jobs that were not there before we started this. And there is data about the number of materials. For example, 73,000 drums of paint is record that we are keeping. So these people also don't keep paint. So the market is being impacted. Wooden trusses 95,000, steel trusses 191, aluminum sliding windows 8,703, 214,000 square meters of wall and floor tiles, 243,183 blocks, and so on and so forth. All of this used to keep buildings in efficient and functional state of repair. There is so much to say, but I think this is a good place to put it to bed. And this, if you permit me, is just to explain what part of what the change agenda of 2015 was all about. Create jobs that didn't exist, create opportunities, make things better than they were, and essentially embedded in all of this is the human story. And I say to people, that is why we are progressives, because everything we try to do is about improving the human condition. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister of Works and Housing. Very distinguished ladies and gentlemen, when we started, I said the Honorable Minister of Works and Housing will speak for 50 minutes. But after 1 hour, it was very difficult for me to stop a moving train because I know he has so many success stories to share. Thank you so much. It was a very beautiful presentation. Thank you very much. Let's give him another round of applause, please. Let me formally welcome the Honorable Minister of the FCT, Malam Mohammed Musa Bello, CON. I welcome you, sir. Let me formally welcome the Honorable Minister of State, Federal Minister of Science, Innovation and Technology, Chief Henry Ikechukwu Iko. Thank you so much for coming. Very distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we are moving straight to the question and answer section. Like I said earlier, when you are recognized to speak, please, you tell us your name, the media organization you are representing, and please restrict your questions or your comments to the issues addressed by the Honorable Minister of Works and Housing in his presentation. And please, let us be decent enough in our use of language. I want to thank you so much. At this point, very distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I want to declare the floor open for your questions, please. Please, you can signify by raising your hands. We'll take 4 questions in a row. Okay, let me start from here, sir. 1, 2, 3, 4. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Honorable Minister. My name is Iyobosa Wogiaren. I write for This Day newspaper. First, let me commend you for your beautiful presentation. As a matter of fact, I've traveled to some of these roads that you are talking about. But there's one road that I want to draw your attention to, and that is Abuja, Lokoja, Okenen, Benin Road. As I speak to you, in the last few days, there have been protests by the youth, especially along Auchi Ekpoma Bini Road, because that road has become unmotorable. You can't pass that road, you know. But I know before you came in 2015, something was happening on that road. But since 2015, it appears that that road has been abandoned in spite of the commercial viability of that road, because a lot of trucks, a lot of commercial activities happening on that road. That is number one. Number two, maybe a bit personal. You talk about the quality of roads. Now, let me draw your attention to one road leading to my town, which is a federal road. Agbo, Abavo, Uronigbe, Obiaroko Road. That road, every year, your director in either Delta State or Edo State keep on awarding that contract. The one they awarded was last year. And within 6 months, that road became so bad. As I speak to you, for you to travel from Agbo to Abavo Uronigbe, you have to take Okada. You can't pass that road. For me to access my village, I have to pass through Wari, Abraka before I approach my village as I speak to you. So, what kind of quality are we talking about? When you keep on spending billions of naira every year awarding the contract, and that road will not last more than 6 months. Maybe you want to respond to that, sir.
The next question, please. Please, just ask one. We don't want twin or triple questions, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. I am also a witness to some of the roads. I've gone with you twice to these project sites. And I'm really fascinated about the Niger Delta Bridge, a second Niger Bridge. We walked through the bridge sometime in April or thereabout. So when is the bridge going to be open to Nigerians to use? Thank you very much.
The third one, please, at the back. At the back, please.
Honorable Minister, I must confess that we are impressed with what you are doing. At the end of your first tenure in 2019, we were at the Ministry of Work with your PAMSEC Booker to listen to your presentation and a lot of innovation that you have put in place. Straight to the question, my name is Akunle Kola Olubio. I've worked with you in the power sector. I'm President Nigeria Consumer Protection Network, and I'm a stakeholder. I'm giving you a feedback from member of the public. One, the Gwarimpa housing project is reputed to be the largest estate, if not the largest in Africa. But the mistake with Gwarimpa housing project is that proceeds from the sales of Gwarimpa housing project supposed to go into a revolving fund. I think we need to learn from that as a legacy for the incoming administration. Whatever housing project, it should not be a free lunch. The one you are having in Zuba, if money is going to be paid by primary mortgage institution or what have you, what structure or governance are we putting in place to make sure that the proceeds from such funds, because money is difficult to find, so that when we get that, it should not be seen for the day-to-day running of the governance structure that we may put in place, so that they will serve as intervention, revolving, you sell from it and use it to replicate, because we couldn't do that with Gwarimpa. That's on the housing. One, you talk about when you came on board in 2015, indebtedness, liability to indigenous contractor as a carryover effect from previous administration. Government is continuum, irrespective of the party in governance. Now we have 1.something trillion naira as liability to indigenous contractors under the Ministry of Works. FCT used to be notorious for that before the present minister. Now the point is, it is huge. Contractors that were awarded contract under the work sector 4 years ago, 5 years ago, they've completed their job. They've been issued certificate that is usually prepared by the department. What do we do, like the tax credit scheme, to make sure that if it's NMPC, if it's some of those people investing in tax credit, how do we clean up the mess so that it doesn't transit to the incoming administration? Liabilities, what is the status of liability today, and how do we address that?
Thank
Honorable
you.
Minister, thank you.
The last question goes to the DG Von. Thank you.
Honorable Minister, we have to commend you for your presentation. Kindly help to clarify this issue that comes up most of the time in the newsroom. One opinion says that at the inception of the regime, that President Muhammadu Buhari cancelled all the road contracts and started afresh. And one opinion said he didn't cancel any, that he continued where the PDP ended. Did he cancel or did he start afresh? Thank you, sir.
Honorable Minister, maybe we just take the last one.
Honorable Minister, my question is very simple. You have accounted for your steward.
Your name, sir?
I'm Yusuf Ali. I work with the Nation newspaper. In summary, how many kilometers of roads do we have in the country? How many of them are impassable? How many have you repaired? And those ones that are not passable, how many are you passing to the next administration, given the timeline? And lastly, your colleague is sitting with you, the Honorable Minister of Information and Culture. I'm quite sure his state is not approachable by road now from Abuja here to Kwara State. When you go from Kaba to Ilorin, the road is impassable. You go through Ekiti, he cannot reach home unless he flies to his state. What is wrong with federal roads in Ekiti, in Kwara, in Osun? Thank you.
Honorable Minister of Information may wish to coordinate the responses. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your questions, and let me just set a context that we are undertaking nation building, and it is a very dynamic, involved process that passes on from generation to generation. And as much as we all wish that everything were done today, the truth is that not everything can be done in the life of any one administration. The important message from my presentation is that we have moved the needle on some of Nigeria's most difficult projects, and we are nearly closing them out. Lagos Ibadan, Niger Bridge, Apapa Oworonshoki, Bodo Boni, roads that seem to defy possibilities. We have taken them on, and we're in control of them, and we will deliver as many of them as possible. So, in terms of specific of what will be handed over to the next generation, part of what I presented to you was our ministry already beginning to write our handing over notes. So we haven't finished. But when my colleague said, look, BRF, I need you to come and start this, I said, okay, let's present it up to the point where we are. By the time we want to go, I will invite you as I did when I was living in 2018-19. And we will hand over our report. And I think that sets the context for the reply I will then give. Yes, we have problems with roads in Ekiti, and we're working on it. One of our limiting factors is revenue and budget provisions. And I have met with some of the traditional owners there. I'm in constant touch with Governor Fayemi. The minister representing Ondo State, Adegoroye, is in touch with me. Alhaji Lai Mohammed himself knows the reality. It is what is appropriated. So most of the funds I've told you, for example, are extraordinary provisions by the president. So what's left in the budget is what legislators who finally approve the budget authorize for us to spend. Now, we have put the Akure Ado-Ekiti road in the Sukuk. We are having problems with the contractor, and we are taking steps to remedy that. There's so many people we're interfacing with, and some of them, if they are listening, will bear witness. We will solve the problem. And also, we have issues in Kwara, but there are other roads coming into Kwara, Ilorin, Jeba, Mokwa. Some of the roads, they link Kwara. The road you talk about, the Kaba road, we were trying to finance through the tax credit. I believe that the design for that has been completed. The procurement process will start. Some we will start and we cannot finish because of the time, but we will put in a sustainable place where the next administration can take it on. And that takes me to Osita's question about council or no council. I think it is foolhardy, really and truly, for anybody to come, and it is a behavior that, as our democracy gets better, will hopefully dissipate, and will find less appeal. But for the record, President Buhari did not cancel or direct or order the cancellation of any project. He did not. Indeed, what he said was that as much as possible, go and complete what exists. And I've had cause to address this nomenclature about abandoned projects. And my conversation with people is, if you look at the meaning of abandoned projects, to abandon something, it means to forsake. We have not forsaken any project. But the truth is that there are not enough resources to finance all of them at the same time. So perhaps we want to redesignate the nomenclature to uncompleted projects because we have not forsaken them. They were designed for certain constituencies. As revenues improve, priorities also. So perhaps in choosing what we do, if you look at this, we shared with you in the first time what we wanted to prioritize. We had 6 urgent priorities at that time. And you will also be able to glean them from the 9 priority areas of the conference, of the retreat we just finished. One of our priorities was roads leading to ports, so that economy can move. We can decongest the seaports and the airports for efficiency of business. So that was a priority area, and you will see many of these roads either connect a seaport or an airport or something contiguous, or they are roads leading to prolific agricultural producing areas. That was a priority for us. Then there were roads leading to mineral producing areas and strategic petroleum depots and roads used for distributing petroleum products in order to ensure energy security. Then, of course, we prioritized roads where we had international multilateral contracts. And that's why I was speaking to you about Akwanga, Kefi, Lafayette, and all of those things. We also prioritize roads connecting roads inside tertiary institutions, and we prioritize bridges. So we've talked only about 2 or 3 bridges here, but there's bridge maintenance works going on nationwide. New bridges are also being built nationwide. We didn't have time to talk about the local Oweto Bridge or the Ikon Bridge or the Ibi Bridge or the Buruku Bridge that are all being built. So there was no time to talk about all of that. So each administration sets priority. You can't solve every problem. But priorities where the ultimate objective is how can you do the greatest good to the greatest possible number in the shortest possible time. So in terms of indebtedness, yes, this indebtedness figure is a moving target. So when I started in 2015, I didn't share with you the debt owed to contractors. There were debts, we met them. I didn't share with you the debts owed to state governments. That has been largely paid. We paid almost $1 trillion to all the state governments across partisan lines. Those were debts incurred by the previous administration, approving for state governors to build federal roads and saying that they will reimburse them. So we are also in this week, I've told you the challenges we had this week. Myself, the PAMSEC, and the Minister of State have been largely in retreat from Monday. We will go back to the office now, tidy up our paper, because we are preparing for budget defense. And we will share with you the final details, because those are not records I keep in my head. The Director of Finance and Accounts and the other directorates will submit a list of all their outstanding liabilities to see how we find a way for them in the budget or make appropriation for them. So that's the only way I can supply those kind of figures, not from my head. I regret to disappoint you. Guarimpa, the point is taken about the need for a revolving fund, but also understand, please, that we operate in an environment of rules and regulations. So if any housing estate is sold today by us and proceeds come into government, they go into special dedicated accounts under the Treasury single account directives. They become revenue to government. Because when you are making the budget, you see the revenue and the expenditure side. So when we are executing now, we're dealing with the expenditure side, awarding contracts. When the revenue comes back, we must account for it, because there were projected revenues of what will come in. And it is from the pot of treasury that really government can say that this is what has come in, and it is going either to pay workers' salary, or it is going into capital expenditure, and so on and so forth. Perhaps with organizations like the FHA, which is not, which is essentially a commercialized agency, we will take your message on board, but they keep their fund really. So they have ways of stratifying their funds now. Before now, when they did Guarimpa, of course, it was a different story. Well, the commitment I made about the second Niger bridge at the retreat was that before this administration goes, it will be fully operational. I made that commitment. I stand by it. But what I was targeting was to see whether we could open it before Christmas. That's what I was targeting. And I hope I am properly understood and properly reported. My target was for Christmas, so that it will give us relief around that area. I've spoken to you earlier about what we do. We have this Ember Month plan. The purpose is to plan for the large commuter movement that happens in Christmas. So one of our plans was, if we could open that Niger bridge even before commissioning for people to use, so that it relieves that sector, in the same way that we were planning that we would open part of the Oyo Ogbomoso, about 30 kilometers, that takes you inside Oyo. You can now bypass Oyo going to Ilorin from Ibadan. We are hopeful also But I reported to you about the Niger Bridge that right now we can't walk there, it's flooded. So I don't know when the flood will fully subside and when work can restart. But I reiterate my report to you. The bridge is finished, but we need to access the bridge. And that is what we are working on, and we will do our best to try to solve it. But as far as handing it over before end of term, take that as given. That will happen. The question is, can it happen earlier? The first question about the Agbo Obiaruku Road. Well, I do apologize and sympathize for the experience you have on that road. But I think that we need to be careful to allege, for example, that billions were spent and the quality of road is not good and so on and so forth. What I know and what the engineers will tell you is that every road has a specified design life. And it is built with that specified design life for a specific axle load bearing capacity. That is, if you use it properly, the way it is designed to be used, it would last you this number of years. Once that number of years is finished, that road needs to be rebuilt. And when we say we are rebuilding a road is built from the base, what is called the sub-base. We're talking of laterite. So you have to first remove everything, which is what is going on Abuja Kano, which is what is going on Lagos Ibadan. You see excavation. All of that laterite cannot be used again. So you need fresh laterite, recompact, and then you put cross stone, and then you put asphaltic whatever, and you put the binder and the wearing course. That's what it takes to rebuild a road. So what you were reporting, probably just rehabilitation to make the road motorable. If the base of the road is gone, no matter how you repair it, it will give temporary relief. When rain comes, and that is when you really feel the impact. Once water enters under a road, it's gone. But axle load abuse also shortens the life expectancy of the road. And these are things that we are trying to enforce. Proper use as distinct from abuse. So what you are probably talking about have been rehabilitations just to improve it. Let me give you an example. When we were going to shut down the Abuja airport, we did a rehabilitation of the Abuja-Kaduna road. We documented every change. That's the language of the engineer, so I can borrow it. But that's at each kilometer where the pothole was. We filled them up. People traveled. 5 months later, there were potholes all over the road. So there was a public petition that, how can you say you did this road? It's all opened up. But the road had finished its design life. That road was built in 1991. If you calculate, it's over 25 years. It's finished. You have to rebuild. So when the petitioners petitioned, we invited them. We now showed them what we did. Kilometer this, kilometer that, and kilometer this. And we sent our team to go with them. Every place that we intervened about 5 months prior was still intact. But new potholes had opened up. And again, we documented, and they said, oh, they were sorry. They didn't understand it. So we had to explain to them, a road that has reached the end of life is like an old piece of cloth, your shirt. You know the fabric is gone. So when you move like this, it will rip here. You will patch it. The following day, it will tear here. That's exactly the analogy to understand what we're dealing with. And I hope it explains. So even in the bad weather, rainy season, we'll try and provide relief. We can't surrender and say we can't do anything. But that doesn't mean we have built that road. We're providing relief to keep people going. And that's what responsible governments should do while we plan the reconstruction. And that takes me to Benin, Eho, Auchi, Okene, Lokoja, because that's really the route. Now, we've done Benin to Eho. It's a better road now. It is the section between Auchi, really, that is really the problem. The problem we have there is that there is nowhere to drain water. That's the problem. So the contractor has slowed down. If you build that road and you don't get rid of water, you are losing the road in less than 5 years. Because water destroys roads. So we had thought of a bypass which was going to take about 40 kilometers, but whose land do we pass through? If you get to after Auchi, the contractor there, Mother Cat, is working. That section is good. The section in Lokoja side was finished first. So these are the realities we deal with, and that is why we embrace these interactions, because it gives us an opportunity to really explain what our problem is. Abuja, Lokoja, Okene, yes, we have problems there. We just awarded the contract, and we also put it in the Sukuk. It was built before we came. It has failed. So we are reconstructing it. We also notice, I'm trying to forget the name of the particular location, where there is heavy deterioration because trucks park there. So our research and quality department have gone there. We have seen that it is the activity of axle load. One side is good, and that is the side where there is no cargo. The other side, when it is cargo bearing and ramping up a slope, puts pressure on the asphalt, and you have what is called rotting. So we've done a new design. We'll have a new contractor there, and you will see relief when the work is complete. Thank you very much.
I want to, at this point, thank the Honorable Minister for those explicit explanations. I thank our ministers. I thank all the chief executives of parastatals, directors from the two ministries, ladies and gentlemen of the media. This is the much we can take for today. We want to thank you so much for your time. We have come to the end of this forum. May we please rise as we take the national anthem, please. Thank you. God bless you.